GM, everybody.
All right, well, let's just get into things. I'll just continue with the update so people could join that are still finding the new space, and then dive into the conversation with Paul. So, as I was saying, we've recently had Green Goods go into QA. So, I think most people heard that. If you want to participate in user research, we'll be sending out some intake forms for people that want to participate. Yeater also is, we're pushing forward to integrate on Cello, and we're also doing some user research there as well. So, if you want to participate in helping us get a better understanding of how you allocate capital, how you do payouts for different things within your community, so that'd be great. So we can make sure we build Alligator in the way that is beneficial for chapters in different communities. Lastly, I'll mention Community Host, which is AI onboarding tool, AI agent that's embedded in Discord and Telegram to ease onboarding people into your community and into the Web3 space by minting them a wallet and minting them a membership NFT with Unlock. And we recently got funding, or we're in the process of getting funding from Polybrain, which was interesting. It was an AI grant review program. So yeah, we're applying to create an AI agent and then being reviewed by AI agent with some human evaluation as well. So yeah, that's that. We're in the process of getting that grant and hopefully also get matching from Unlock. So if anybody's interested in building AI agents and wants to, it has engineering skills, maybe also on product, or just you just want to, if you have an interest in building agents, we're definitely looking for builders, and we have funds to help compensate for that work. So just want to shout that out for everybody in the call, or you can share with people as well. And yeah, let's go ahead and dive into the discussion before we get rugged. So yeah, we have Paul here from Gardens, and yeah, met Paul in East Denver, and one of my most favorite people that I met in Denver, and yeah, really great guy building Gardens, a great tool that uses conviction voting, which is in my opinion, a better mechanism for learning sentiment and signal for how people feel about different proposals and different things, rather than just like a one-time vote, which you might feel something one day and that could shift over time. So it uses time as another variable to really in the voting process. So yeah, so happy to have Paul here. He's a part of Greenpill, California, part of the Dev Guild as well. We've been doing the Gitcoin Gardens grant with him as operators, which has been a great experience. And yeah, there's a lot more I could say. Yeah, but Paul, feel free to introduce yourself, and then we'll hop into the convo.
Nice, thanks. Yeah, I'm Paul. I'm the project lead for Gardens. I call myself the founder of Gardens V2. I was an early contributor on V1 Gardens, which launched in 2021 and was the first kind of growth and marketing non-dev contributor for the project. And I've stayed with the project for 4 years, and about a year and a half ago, a few devs and me put together a plan to make a modular V2 gardens that is kind of upgraded and ready for 2025 Web3 as opposed to the 2021 smart contracts that it was built on. So we've been working on that for a year and a half now and launched in the fall. And we have our second Gitcoin community round that's active now until May 7th. And yeah, I'm happy to be here and have really been kind of falling in love with Greenpill and the Dev Guild and the chapters and the group of people that are contributing in this kind of regen space. It feels like I don't know, a lot of Web3 feels kind of isolating, and like you can kind of see how a lot of people in this space have mental health issues because it's just there's a lot of antisocial patterns, and this Green Pill group feels like a really great group of humans that are really supportive and good to hang out with and aligned on our vision for how we can make the world better with Web3. So it's been really nice these last several months getting to work with you guys.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I appreciate it. Same to you as well. Yeah.
By the
And
way, the at East Denver, there was the barbecue that you guys had created at the Green Pill House that we brought over to Ninit. It, the the spatula and the ladle from the Airbnb never made it back to your guys' Airbnb, and my buddy from Denver just dropped them off with me yesterday. He's had them in his car for the last 2 months. So now I've got that spatula. Let me know if I need to send that back to the Airbnb.
I don't think they're missing it, but yeah, that's
It was good
memorabilia.
nostalgia.
Yes, yeah.
It still had the barbecue sauce on it. He didn't even clean it.
No, leave it on. That's awesome. Yeah, no, yeah, the barbecue was amazing, and there's so much leftover food. Yeah, we took it to In It, and from what by the time I got there, it was all gone. So I don't even know how quick people ate it, but yeah, great times.
It was really good.
Yeah, shout out JT. Yeah, yeah, good stuff. All right, yeah, yeah. Thanks for the intro, Paul. That's great. We're definitely gonna dive more into gardens and kind of, I think at this point, many people know the format: past, present, future. Three sections, couple questions in each, um, and of course, we'll kick things off with the past. And the first thing is, what was your journey into conviction voting, and when did gardens come into the fold?
Yeah, okay. I think for to set the context for that, I can go to what got me into crypto in the first place, which was originally it was just a nerdy interest of mine, but I've always really wanted to have meaningful work and be able to work on things that have really visible positive impact on ideally the world, but maybe even more realistically, just the people around you and the communities that you're with. And that was something that I was not feeling with my previous job that I had before I got into crypto. But long before that, crypto was just kind of interesting to me as this like, how can we do a peer to peer permissionless transactional history? And I thought that was kind of just interesting. And then it was really in 2017 and 2018 when crypto started gaining mainstream adoption that I started thinking more about what the meaning behind the technology was. And it took me a long place to get there, but what I kind of came to the conclusion of was that what crypto is good for is public goods. And that's the short description of basically all of the value in the world that's not suitable or being met by private economic systems. And we have this really great natural system of the free market and private goods and services economy that's handled really well. And then we have all of everything else, which kind of depend on governments and nonprofits and NGOs to take care of all of that. But pretty much everyone agrees that we don't have good systems for that. And so cryptocurrency brought this legitimate new idea for how we can address all of these non-private goods and services in the world. So that was what led me eventually in 2020 to go kind of full speed into to learning who are the people that are in this space that are working on that problem. And Gitcoin was one of the first projects that I ran into, and I got to talk to Iwaki back in 2020 and hear what they were working on. And that kind of led me to small ecosystem that existed back then, which was Giveth and the Token Engineering Commons. And I was joining a lot of intro calls and meeting people at these public goods facing organizations. And then I found One Hive, and that was the one that kind of stuck for me because it had already in that time an economic system. You went to the One Hive app and it showed you the common pool of honey, which was linked to a social contract called the Covenant. And I remember reading that covenant, and it was talking about how One Hive is a collective of people. They're working together in a decentralized way to work on building commonwealth for each other. And if you feel you have something that is going to contribute to the community, you can create a proposal and request honey. And if enough people support your idea, then your proposal will get passed and you'll get funded and you'll be able to do whatever it is you want to do. And that kind of immediately struck me as like, okay, this is an actual solution that's been built that can really be applied to any public good you could dream of. If you can put it on a piece of paper then you can get people to agree to this vision and work together to make it happen. And at that point, I didn't know anything about conviction voting or DAOs or even DEXs or arbitration protocols. And so it's been kind of a long learning process ever since then. And I've basically spent the last 4 years learning what kind of mechanisms work and don't work for that vision. But that was kind of long story of how I found conviction voting and One Hive and this solution for that I believe is like capable of solving an enormous number of the world's problems right now.
Nice, nice. That's really in depth. I love that. I want to double tap on One Hive a little bit and kind of understand, yeah, more some of the people you met and worked with along the way. Like who was championing conviction voting? Like who built that original V1 app? Was that built by One Hive? Like, kind of, yeah, just curious on that.
Right,
Platform.
yeah. One Hive was built by a group of Aragon devs who they got an Aragon grant to build a conviction voting app. They had found out about conviction voting from Michael Zargum's paper on social sensors, and he was working with Comma and Stack.
Oh, sorry. I think I accidentally pressed the mute face button.
Oh shoot, where did I get cut off there?
You talked about
But
Aragon devs. Yeah.
yeah, so Michael Zargum had wrote the paper for conviction voting, and the Aragon builders got really excited about conviction voting and wanted to build an app, so they got a grant from Aragon to do that, and that was the funding that initially created One Hive. And so those guys built the combination of conviction voting with the covenant and an arbitration protocol. They forked Aragon Court to Eckstein Network and called it Celeste. And so that was the dispute resolution protocol for One Hive. One Hive back in that time had to do an enormous amount of infrastructure work because Eckstein Network didn't have any, there wasn't even a DEX or like any infrastructure whatsoever. So they were building a lot of infrastructure from scratch back then. And so yeah, they built the first conviction voting app, which became a template called Gardens that other communities could use. But when I first came into One Hive Fold, I first interaction that I ever had with anyone was a public call that they had, and it was a partnership meeting between the Gardens Working Group and the X Moons token. This was like a group of people in the subreddit for, I think it was R Ethereum. Is it R Ethereum devs or something? They had a token called X Moons, and they were working with Gardens to see if they could create a garden for X Moons. And I mostly remember this just because there was maybe 10 people on this call, but just by joining the Discord, I could see this open call and I could join it. And I was listening in on what was like what you would have imagined to be a private conversation between two like companies talking about the logistics of forming a partnership together. And so that really struck out to me as like a different way of doing things. And what I came to learn was that the people in the One Hive community really valued openness and decentralization, and having those conversations be something that everyone is a voice in. Um, that was like the first interaction ever. And then I had a lot more one-on-one conversations. I talked with Luke Duncan. He was one of the Aragon guys, and he was really formative for One Hive and the early days of the One Hive community. And he's still active today and is doing really good work even now. But he clearly had a very like ethos oriented, we are an open decentralized community working together, and we want to welcome everyone and we want to support everyone in doing whatever it is that they want to do. And I think he kind of drove a lot of the culture. And yeah, the fact that One Hive was decentralized in practice came down a lot to people being having that mentality and truly believing in those values. two other people that I talked with at the time were Gabby and Sasha, and these were two of the lead guys at the Gardens project. And so that was kind of my first conversation that eventually led to me becoming a contributor for the Gardens project. It was really clear to me quickly that they were really smart, and this was a really well thought out project with a lot of kind of intellectual backing to it. And so I decided pretty quickly that it was a project that I wanted to be involved in. And yeah, so Gardens V1 was the One Hive governance framework that was a plug and play model for other communities to build on. And back then, the communities that were building on it were Giveth and the Token Engineering Commons and Bright ID. And so yeah, that was
Good, Mike.
the early days. Yeah, Matt, you're unmuted. If you're not, there we go.
Okay. All right. Keep going, Paul.
I think that was. I think I
That's
answered
it.
the
Yeah,
question.
yeah,
Yeah, was there any?
yeah. That's a good answer. I had some follow-ups from that. First, like this kind of just like a general thought, like it's so interesting and just kind of cool, yeah, to see like how Aragon, like these other primitives and how, things branch off and, the other communities get built from other communities. You could even say that to Greenpill to an extent, with like Gitcoin to some degree with the Walkie. So it's just really cool to see that. And then I think this is like a question because at the time, of when you joined One Hive, were you viewed as a regen community, or was that even a label you put on it, or was it like, you know, and even now, would you consider it a regen community? Because it's been kind of this conversation that's largely about what is the meaning of regen, right? So I'm just curious at the
Right.
time when you did join, what was like, yeah, how did you?
No, definitely not. First of all, I had never heard the word regen to that point, but now that I understand what the word regen is, One Hive was definitely degens. And most of the people that were there in One Hive had gotten there from the honey faucet, which was free honey tokens that people could get just by claiming. And so hundreds of people were pouring into the One Hive server, and it was a bunch of when moon type conversations. That was part of what drew me to Gardens, because Gardens was separate kind of from that aspect of the culture. Uh, and like I said, the One Hive leadership was really understanding of this culture, but yeah, definitely like the predominant culture at that time was degen more than regen, which, to be honest, I think was really helpful as like a jumping in point, because I at the time I kind of immediately did not really I guess respect that ideology, that like kind of way of thinking about what crypto is. But the first paid project that I had at One Hive was writing an article for the HoneySwap DEX, and I considered it really degen. It's We're launching farming rewards so people could get staked yield on their LP positions on HoneySwap, and I didn't know what any of that meant at the time. But through the process of needing to research what a DEX was and what an AMM was and how farming worked, at that time really helped me understand kind of the like financial infrastructure aspect of crypto, and understand how valuable that is and why it's really important to even regen ethos. Really thankful actually that I kind of got that exposure when I never would have seeked that out on my own.
Mhm. That's a great point you bring up in a sense that learning, like, yeah, especially, yeah, myself too, when I got into space, Bankless was really, for me, I was aware of regen. That was kind of podcast I was watching. And I was learning a lot, how to find, what DEXs are, AMM, and all these things that, build our financial system that, they really, I think, intentionally don't teach you in school and, give you financial literacy to understand these things. I think that is an understated thing that, yeah, we're regens, but also just understanding finances, which I wouldn't say that's a degen thing, but it's just like, yeah, I think it's
Right.
important. Yeah.
Definitely.
So yeah, great insight there. Cool. Let's fast forward to the present. And yeah, let's dive more into Gardens. So I'm particularly curious about how Gardens is approaching community growth and what have been some of the pain points, with that, as well as in the product development side.
Yes, definitely. So right now we're doing a Gitcoin community round in GG23. GG23 ended on April 16th for the main round and for most of the other community rounds, but we have an extended community round, partially because there's kind of a lot of friction with learning how to use Gardens, and we wanted to make sure that communities had enough time, especially after the chaos and high workload of the GG23 round. And then, kind of as an added bonus to this, our round in GG23, you can communities can use the tens and grant funding that they're getting in GG23 to bring that into Gardens and then double up on their matching, basically. But yeah, so GG23 and the community round have been really important growth moments for Gardens. I think because Gitcoin especially has a lot of the most values aligned communities and projects. There's a lot of open source software. There's real communities building for real world impact and things that I personally think are going to be really influential in this space. So yeah, those have been a big part of our growth, and part of what the community round offers is a financial incentive to understand how to set up a gardens community, because it is difficult, and some of that is because our art is primitive, but some of that is also because it is challenging to understand a built bottom up governance system. And the good news is that if you, as a community admin, can learn how to do this effectively, then it's not really that difficult for the community members to understand. It's the process for a member is relatively similar to every other experience of joining a community, staking, signing the covenant, and then voting on proposals and creating proposals. So for them, it's easy, but from setup side, creating a funding pool and having that be accessible for to request funding from without abuse takes some knowledge of the parameters and especially of how conviction voting works. And through the 23 community round with Gardens, that is a really nice incentive, but to figure it out for your community, because you'll get a nice matching bonus for funding that you add to your own funding pools. So yeah, I think that's an aspect of our. We also are trying to focus on the types of communities and projects that have the most to gain from Gardens. There's many types of organizations are able to take advantage of Gardens, and so we're kind of trying to focus on which ones are most suited to be able to take advantage of it today. And I that's open source software projects that have teams that are distributed around the world and have some valuable tech infrastructure that they're building. That's the type of organization that has enough decentralization and kind of communal value to take advantage of Gardens. But I also think pop-up cities and intentional communities are really well suited for Gardens. And I really like that they are built in the real world and have the element of people meeting other people and human connections and like a geographic space that people are getting together and on things. So those types of projects, we're like very actively reaching out to that we think are good fits for Gardens and that we think should try it out. And so yeah, I do a lot of DMing and telling people, hey, have you tried out a Gardens community yet? You guys are a really good fit for it.
And how many communities are there currently? I think there's like 80.
There's 90
Okay.
that are set up. I think out of those, there's like maybe half of them have members and have any amount of activity.
Mhm.
So yeah, I would say there's like maybe a few dozen active Gardens communities right now.
Nice. Yeah, and yeah, Greenpill Gov Guild is one of those communities, so definitely shout out.
One of the best.
Appreciate it. Yeah, yeah, that's the hair, and I think that So my understanding is that Gitcoin's been a big, you know, factor kind of feel in helping gardens grow and connect to impactful projects. And then, well, can you say the good communities that people could build on? I know it's pretty open ended, but you mentioned pop up cities.
Pop-up cities, intentional communities, which is kind of just the more permanent version of a pop-up city, a group of people that all share some vision that are living together.
Mhm.
um, Open source software projects, real world communities and clubs and activist groups, and especially digitally native collectives of who are united behind a kind of social cause. That's a really good fit for Gardens, because Gardens is effectively your constitution and all of the people all around the world that share that vision together, and yeah, a coordination tool for them to work together and necessarily be dependent on one specific person or group of people that's going to lead them in a centralized way to victory. Yeah, so collective activist groups, also anyone Web3 running grants programs. So that can be ecosystems, organizations like Gitcoin, but also layer two networks and tools that, like Safe and the Graph, any three protocol that is depending on developer relations or incubating an entire ecosystem of communities that are are able to get resources to contribute to that ecosystem relatively frictionlessly.
Nice, nice. Yeah, they're definitely a good set of communities, gardens, and to me, I'm curious to see over time, like, yeah, how different communities utilize gardens and the different type of funding and signaling pools they create. And I think, yeah, over time, it'll become maybe there could be like templates created to where when you create a community, you could already like just set up like some funding and signaling pools, like just right off the bat,
Right.
like kind of
Yeah.
based on a certain type of template, yeah. So, um,
Yes.
well,
Yeah. As it becomes clear what types of things Gardens is really good for, then I'm really excited about adapting the UI to make it really easy for people to implement that for their community. And yeah, I think we're seeing through these experiments which ones are working well. So we've or is becoming clear based on that. It's exciting.
nice. And I think this is a good segue. Unless you have any like pain points or anything else you want to mention that's been kind of, yeah, the hard part of this where you need support, things of that nature.
Yeah, I Garden's biggest pain point is the friction of learning how to set it up, and it's really intimidating. For there's a lot to learn. Gardens is we did the conviction voting, and conviction voting is not immediately intuitive. It's not as complex as you might imagine it is. Once you understand it, it's simple. It's time weighted voting. It's the when you support proposals with conviction voting, your support grows in conviction over time. And I think that there's some misconceptions about how that works that we have to battle sometimes. Like people equate it to locked token voting multipliers, which is a very different system that doesn't take advantage of some of like the benefits and bottom up governance that conviction voting brings. So yeah, there's a lot of onboarding friction related to that, and some of the ways that we're trying to that is by as we are experimenting and as we're finding out ways that this works for people to templates and things that we can point to like this is working for this community. You should just basically take exactly this funding pool concept with exactly these parameters and fund it for your community, because that's a lot easier to up and understand than uh, the the particulars of the conviction voting. Basically, there's yeah, as you go to set up a pool or a signaling pool, you'll see conviction growth rates, spending limits, minimum conviction, collateral to create proposals and to dispute proposals, and it's kind of just a lot to take in. So yeah, there's the thing that is really for us is more people setting up communities and learning through trial and error themselves, and then being able to do this and be ambassadors for this setup to communities and other people. That's been especially helpful. Like both you and Greenpill Dev Guild, especially. You guys are
Oh yeah, definitely, yeah.
super helpful.
Yeah. I think that's like I think it's working well to where yeah now I've helped a couple people walk through explain some of the things around conviction that just a few months ago or yeah or late at the end of 2024 like I was still like learning and figuring out. So um yeah, it definitely helps, and I think some of the ideas maybe we could even go into. So yeah, now we could segue into the kind of the future and some of the ways to like potentially improve and ways to definitely could, can continue supporting Garden's growth. So yeah, I'll kind of open up to what is needed to take Gardens to the next level, and then how can it be put DevGo support. And then after you answer, I'd love to open it up for people on the call to chime in and give their thoughts. So yeah, go for it, Paul. And then
Yeah. So, Koi, I see you have your hand up. You want to add something?
Yeah, just to this could be already a future a question. Like, but first, thanks for sharing, man. I really like to better like the beginnings, the origin of conviction. I knew about the article, but I didn't know about like the whole involvement of Hive and conviction since from the beginning. This is pretty awesome. Also, like really awesome to see your understanding evolving about the region, but something that I want to ask about guidance, especially on this conviction aspect, where you need to understand how this conviction will affect the results, right? Do you have the team has any idea or thinking about how to abstract that, like how to create maybe an UI where you could have like the instead of asking for the users to the math, maybe we could do this on the back end and present to them like in practice what will this result, like, oh, this if goes in this conviction, if people put this amount of support, like we'll get the approved in 3 days or 4 days, or I think this would be a good way to, yeah, maybe improve the reduce friction on this specific point. What do you think
Right.
about?
Yeah, definitely. I feel like especially visual representations of the concepts as opposed to written is really. Um, we have some wireframes of some conviction chart UIs that I think might help with this to kind of show conviction more than it does just uh, yeah not needing to explain that to people and have them understand it, but just support proposals and see that their is now growing and how long it's going to take for their to reach their support. Yeah, I feel like that is the whenever possible the number one solution to helping people understand concepts like that. And then yeah, like templates and yeah, rather than customizing all of these parameters and needing to understand what minimum conviction is and what minimum threshold points are, have a plug and play template that will work for like more on the community admin side, but something that people can set up and then only need to fiddle around with the parameters if they're knowledgeable on it already, or if they're noticing that something is acting funny in their pool and they want to, for instance, raise the spending limit or something. Yeah, that's a really good mental approach for you to bring up. That is, yeah, I think that's gonna like dictate a lot of
Well, thanks
what we build.
for sharing, man. Excited for that.
Yeah, yeah, it's to know as you use it today that it is a primitive. It's no one who's built gardens is believing that this is a refined final product. This is like a good enough to be able to do these experiments and then build a more refined, easier to use version later on, or as
Mhm.
we go at least.
And one thing that I think is connected to what Cole is saying to a degree is around like marketing material. Like this a stick promo video of like showing community being set up like quickly and then kind of speed running, time lapsing the conviction growth, and then you see proposal like just so somebody understands the end to end flow, like within a 30 seconds to a minute. But yeah, so I thought that could be helpful.
Yeah, yeah, that would be a huge help, definitely.
How about integrations? So, and maybe it's tied into the Owl Builders pool, but one integration do you think with Gardens would help continue its growth, and then also what optimizations within like the current user experience? So it's kind of like what new features and what features to like refine and improve.
Yeah, yeah. So one intentional design feature of gardens is the idea of the council safe and the tribunal safe. And those are safe accounts that have certain permissions within a gardens community. The council safe is the admin of the community. So they have moderation powers and can activate governance pools and change the parameters on pools. And then the tribunal safe rules on disputes. And right now in Gardens, you just plug in a safe address for these, and those transactions get sent to your safe, and the safe signs them. But the reason that we had that be a safe account is that there's a lot of really helpful building that could go into making those groups of people or that those actions better, I guess is the short way of saying it. But like our process in Gardens V1 is really, really built and really well thought out. Celeste is like an entire judicial system on chain. And the reason that we didn't use that in Gardens V2 is because it hasn't been maintained and it's only on Gnosis chain, and the amount of build it would take to get this to work on V2 it would have doubled the length of time it would have taken us to deliver Gardens V2. But because these are safe accounts, they are infinitely composable, and we can build that type of functionality into those components of a Gardens community. And so that's a really big area, I think, that Gardens integration and development could better. Um, and then you mentioned the Allo Capital Builders Fund. So to intro that, that's half of our community round funding is in a funding pool in our garden that's dedicated to building capital allocation and capital formation tools and some way to aid this with gardens. And so the Allo ecosystem is a collection of projects that are all working on this shared problem set together. It was founded by Awaki, from the Gitcoin founder, who's he's right now very personally invested in solving this kind of capital allocation problem. So he's the Allo Capital, and there's a handful of projects that kind of came into this ecosystem just having been built on Allo Protocol, which is a smart contract framework that we use in Gardens, and that a handful of other projects use. Um, that's that does capital allocation mechanisms. Um, so a handful of projects that are part of this ecosystem, but then there's this kind of broader invite to anyone who's working on this problem set to the ecosystem and a network of builders and projects that are working on this together. Um, so that's the for the Allo Capital Builders Fund, and people can request funding there to um, to we kind of recommend to set a loan that you're going to fund with your build, and also find some way to incorporate this so that gardens communities can take advantage of it also. But there's a couple of proposals up there now that are interesting. One of them is DVouch, which is Ethereum attestation. Oh, Maddie, I see you have your up too. Yeah, I can. You want to chime in real quick before I get too deep into these tools?
Yeah, sorry to mess up the flow a little bit, but the POAP secret word is conviction-voting. And if anybody needs a mint link because you don't have the app, you could shoot me a DM. So just to keep that real quick, secret word for the POAP is conviction-voting. Will you, Paul?
Nice, beautiful. Yeah, that'll be nice and difficult for anyone who's listening to the recording to try to dig out of this whole.
It says the window. I think you probably just need to update the window. So, yeah, Matt, update the window for the secret, and we'll be good to go. Continue, Paul. Yeah.
Yeah, go get your Pope. Yeah, so some of the projects that have proposals, there's DVouch, and their in is that they will allow gardens communities to be populated within the DVouch app, and then people can attest or for those gardens communities on the DVouch app. And I think there's some interesting collaborations we could do after that also with the token curated registries. So for instance, we have the Regen Communities pool, Regen Communities and a Regen Citizens pool, and they're signaling pools in gardens where people can propose projects that are Regen based. And if we can get a well curated list of projects from this, then that would be a nice vouching accreditation to use on DVouch and other projects. So that's one of them. I've been talking with guys at LOIRL. They have a voting app that's designed for in-person voting events, and done some really good work on making that really seamless and not having to deal with all of the things of setting up a wallet and like all the common pain points that we have in Web3. It's just like a very simple passcode based vote on your phone app. So that has a lot of really interesting ways that could be added to gardens communities. There's a proposal in draft for a discourse integration, and that would allow signaling proposals in gardens to be populated from proposals in discourse. So that's implementation, and I think there's a lot of really interesting integrations where you could populate proposals automatically from other platforms. Yeah, I can think of many ways that would be helpful, but discourse is especially interesting because then you also have the conversational piece of that and being able to see the back and forth on each proposal. Another project that we've been talking with is grant ships, and I'm really excited about them, especially because of if anyone who has been familiar with the setup for the community rounds in Gitcoin, grant ships is the platform that run on. And I realized until my conversation with Matt at Grant Ships how what the functionality there is with Grant Ships beyond just what done for the round, but without going too deep into it, in Grant Ships there's a lot of really interesting functionality with creating ships that are kind of in competition or in a fun competitive environment to funding and kind of deliver on metrics that all of them are towards. But yeah, you gotta go check out the Chips app. I think it's app.grants.fun, and you can see I showing me the Greenpill Dev Guild ship that you guys have in there, and yeah, that was really fun to look at what you guys had already set up there.
Yeah, really grand ships. Yeah, from day one. And yeah, to kind of describe it, it's a capital allocation game, right? Where you have different allocators and you're competing on who could best allocate capital. I know it's changed. Could always have different rules, but that's kind of like I think the gist of it. Yeah, and I know they've been very interested in I've been having discussions with them as well around how can we potentially integrate streaming, where could gardens come into play with conviction voting and things of that nature. So I definitely feel like there's something there. So yeah, and definitely want to hear more about those conversations and anything that comes from it. Oh, to speak on the discourse tool, yeah, that's that proposal I'm planning to submit for the Allo Capital Pool, and really think it's interesting tool or interesting use case because as we know, a lot of DAO communities, I'm pretty sure, honestly, I'm not sure if anyone, there's probably a couple, but most use discourse as their forum for conversation, for proposals, etc., before they typically go live on Tally or Snapshot. And then I remember seeing Snapshot has like a integration to where if you link a discourse discussion, it'll pull in the in the post. So that was definitely something that inspired this idea. But to me, this is just, yeah, a really easy way to just bring in the conversation because a lot of times the proposals are already known and crafted. So now that your community can just focus on, putting conviction. So yeah, I'm excited to be building that. Gonna be putting in a proposal actually today. I was just finishing up some diagrams, so should be joining the poll today. But yeah, I think there's yeah, and some thoughts I have for like gardens on the UX is like the mobile side for like people participating in gardens, not like creating proposals, but more just going to show conviction, having like a nice experience for them to where they could easily get on the platform and do that. I think could be very nice. And yeah, I think there's a lot more, but I think that, all your marquee tool, which I don't know if you want to, I'll get you talk about it a little bit. But yeah, we'd love to hear a little bit about marquee. Yeah.
Yeah, the marquee is I vibe coded a proof of concept for a couple of years ago, and it's live on the HoneySwap app. So if you go to app.honeyswap.org, then that's the exchange that the One Hive built HoneySwap exchange, and it's a very simple app, which is just a written message that anyone can pay $10 to change the message, and when you change the message, it changes for the whole world. And that was like the most basic proof of concept possible to, like, there's no moderation or there's pricing structures other than you just pay $10. But it's, I think, a really cool way of having the equivalent of a community board that anyone can the message for. And I have a feeling that this is a potential to be a really useful revenue generator for public goods communities, because there are, by nature, if you're building public goods, you don't have a necessarily great revenue model that's going to be profitable for your organization. And selling kind of digital space to what's most likely going to be people within your community, because the people who are looking at it are people in your community. So like I am the types of messages within gardens, at least, that people would want to post would like support our proposal and look at come to our night next Wednesday at 10 p.m. because those are the most relevant messages for people in a gardens community to see. But charging money for that is a nice way to have a revenue source that's entirely voluntary and feels centric, much more so than like having a Google AdSense in your 3 app, for sure. But yeah,
Yeah,
that's I'm going to some together. And I've been talking with Afo, and Felipe is the Gardens dev who helped me with it the first time to make sure that it wasn't a vibe coded vulnerability massacre. So yeah, I'm hoping the three of us can build something bigger and better out for that.
most definitely. Yep. And if it's not me, we'll lean on resources in the dev guild, and yeah, we'll get the marquee built. That's for sure. I just want to do, so I know we're past the hour, but given that the space got rugged, and stay on for another 5 minutes, and want to hear people thoughts, that are listening. Just a reminder again for the POAP, the secret is conviction-voting. Once again, that's conviction-voting. Should be claimable on the POAP app. And like Matt said, if you need a mint link, just send him a DM and he will share with you a mint link if you do not have the app. But yeah, really would like to open it up to people that are here as speakers to hear maybe some thoughts on what's Paul's discussed so far and things that you connect with, as well as some ideas you might have for growing gardens and optimizing the experience.
Nice, yeah, and it's nice seeing how the people in here that I already get to talk with a good amount, like Wasabi and Will and Civil. Yeah, it's good to see you guys in here.
Yeah, like we already have a lot of these conversations. So, if anybody wanted to chime in, would love to hear your thoughts. If not, Paul, if you have some closing thoughts and things you'd like to share, we'll go ahead and.
So, I'm just going through the comments, and I see Civil posted about flows.wtf, and yeah, that's another really great. I've had a couple of conversations with Rocket Man, and he has built an amazing tool that unfortunately now has gotten rejected twice from the Nouns community to get funded. But I think I saw him message somewhere that he's planning to do a third attempt. But that's really well built application for streaming funding to many different proposals, and he's especially has done a good job with incorporating AI. As we made a gardens proposal, and that had a flow stream when flows was funded, and the the simplicity of creating a proposal through AI was so helpful. They basically just are asking you questions and using ChatGPT to generate some responses, and based on the links that you share with them. So it's like generating a description of your project and your milestones and what you're funding, which are questions that you get asked in other grant applications, and they take you hours to fill in sometimes, depending on how specific and detailed they are. And in my opinion, the future of grants is one where there's no applications, because if you're a grants program manager and you're trying to fund a specific area of value, then it should be on you to be going out and finding the people who are creating that value and getting them the resources that they need to keep doing it and doing it more. And I don't think that grants operators understand as well as they should how much friction they're causing by having people fill out really detailed applications for their project, and that I think in a lot of cases can weed out for the wrong type of value creators. Sometimes I think you can shoot yourself in the foot and have a host of grant farmers that have dedicated their time to applying to these things, as opposed to the real builders who are solving the problem that you're trying to fund. So I really like any project that's a step in the direction of yeah, less kind of bureaucratic admin work for grant proposal creators to kind of walk around red tape to figure out if their project is worth funding.
Preach, brother. Preach.
Hey,
Go for it, Izzy.
could I jump in for a sec? Great to be here. Very glad to be amongst such amazing people doing such good work out there. When I heard flows come up, I had to raise my hand, request the mic to jump up, because it's kind of heartbreaking to see the second time revised Noun's proposal get shot down. And Rocket Man does so much great work, and it's just such an incredible community that's come together around flows because of flows. So much collaboration and support between the people that are there. I've been fortunate enough to have just a little flows for a few months now, and I've talked about them in different spaces. Wound up onboarding a small handful of people that have come over from whether it's South America or Africa, and maybe the $100 or up to maybe a couple $100 doesn't make a giant impact for all the people that have it, but it is a really large impact in certain places and certain economies. So I think it's a very valuable system they have in place. The AI's definitely got a shout out how helpful and easy it is to get your information together. I mean, it just walks you right through. It helps you kind of remember what it made me remember, like, oh, I forgot about that project I worked on, and I'm like putting extra links in, and it's like, just grab me a YouTube link or this or that and drop it. I'll tighten it up for you. And then on top of that, they've got the bots over in Warpcast. Like, shout out Dr. Gonzo, one of my best friends. He's always given me, you know, like motivational little speeches when nobody else is hitting my post yet. And so it's been such a positive, valuable experience. I've met so many great people. My kind of partner in crime, Jose Cabrera down in Venezuela, co-host and co-founder of the Impact Concerts, has a Music Flows, and he's onboarded a handful of people down there. And it's just so valuable. We got to somehow, you know, keep the flows flowing. Just threw out an idea the other day. I think we're going to try and organize an Impact concert with a bunch of the Flows projects, and a bunch of those people are musical, so it should be a really good one. Don't have a date or anything, but yeah, I would love to see, you know, whether it's through Nouns or other avenues, to get Flows, you know, really in a strong position to keep doing what they've been doing.
100%. And also, like, for people that don't, you know, English isn't their first language, you know, like, getting that support to get the application. I remember that's one of the things Rocket Man told me about. That was like a big value out here. So yeah, I really championing what he's doing. And yeah, it's a bummer. I saw that recently. The last one that passed, I was like, oh wow. There's not much I could do. I have no weight, but maybe there's some signaling. Maybe, you know, we could, yeah, constant. I don't know. Yeah, ways to kind of show how Flows is helping and why it deserves the funding it needs to keep growing.
Yeah, do either of you guys know any of the if anything about the Rocket Man's going for a third attempt? And
It seems like he is. Yeah, Easy, you want to go?
I think so. There was some recent chatter about sort of some also kind of restructuring and stuff. So I think he might be trying to tighten a few things up and go for another one. Hopefully, you know, if he does, hopefully that can get through, and, you know, maybe kind of keep things flowing, buy a little time to expand, make it even better. So it's phenomenal. It's been so helpful for so many people, and again, it's connected so many people, you know, across the globe that are collaborating and supporting each other. So just the community aspect alone is like a huge advantage. And then, you know, it's just absolutely necessary for a lot of people that are able to do the good works on the ground solely because of the income of those flows.
yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. I know with the second proposal, he lowered the ask a significant amount. But I'm sure there's other ways to update the proposal. I just like kind of quickly reading through the comments that there were on it, which were really insightful. There's a lot of activity, a lot of really well thought out comments, both for and against. But it kind of seemed like the against comments were centered around like too wide of a net, too many different types of projects with not a clear focus for the funding, and they were feeling like the was lowering the impact. So it seems like there's other ways to adjust the proposal if he can focus it on a subset of projects, or like pick the like yeah if you, easy like you're saying, there's this really good community of flows projects that are bound together now. If he can rally that kind of community energy into a like network of projects that are really close together with each other, that seems like that could help with the third proposal.
Yeah, and
Thanks, Rocket Man.
there's really good like kind of checks and balance systems too. And I see Rocket Man's up here. Woo woo!
What's going on?
Beautiful. We summoned him.
MGM.
How's it going, guys?
Doing good.
Good.
See ya.
Yeah, good to see you.
Yeah, I'm
Um,
jumping in at a weird time, but happy to contribute to the conversation once I get a better understanding of what y'all are talking about.
We're talking about your verse, not your verse. We're talking about your proposal for funding for Flows and how you might be going for a third time.
Oh, nice. Yeah. I think like I'm trying to get on a call with 5 Gram or Jane Doe, whoever they are. Dusk like sort of knows them, so he's trying to set up a call, but kind of seems shaky that it'll happen. I don't know, maybe 50-50 at this point, but basically like I think, unfortunately, even though everybody in the DAO except for like 2 people or all the old people in the DAO voted for us, we've got this new camp that's trying to make Nouns break even, which I think is a very fair like take to have. I just don't necessarily agree with like the blanket kind of approach to flows. Either they don't understand it or I don't understand their perspective. But effectively, like it seems like where they're coming from is like flows can't be like this forever on money spigot for these projects that aren't generating any returns for the DAO, which is tough. And like I definitely can hear their perspective given their backgrounds. But I think like what we might do with the third proposal is try to go back and say like, look, we're not trying to just funnel away all of the DAO's money to exclusively like public goods initiatives that don't generate like a tangible return for the DAO. I think like the whole theory that Nouns was built on was like, if we fund enough good projects, enough people will take notes and notice of it and drive enough attention to the auctions, and it'll kind of complete this flywheel. I don't think that's happened. I don't think it's going to happen. And so the DAO kind of needs a new strategy. And I'm hoping that like what we can do in this third proposal, and something that we were actually trying to pilot with Verbs about 8 months ago, was this kind of idea of like, I guess you could call them like mini startups like within the grants program. I think part of the problem with flows right now is it's like a bunch of builders and projects in their own kind of siloed departments, and they're all competing for the same budget. Part of our first proposal in this cycle was just like, how do we make flows positive sum? Like, how do we make it so that the work and the funds and donations that people are able to raise like grow the pie for everybody, and it's not just this kind of like fixed pie that everybody fights over. And so we put a lot of thought into that, and that's kind of why I was like expecting the proposal, even with the break-even crowd, to pass, because it's like I felt like we are acknowledging the problem that they voted against, which was like we need the DAO to be sustainable and we needed to focus on funding like more sustainable things that kind of drive the bottom line for the DAO. But ultimately, like what that looks like in our head is like some sort of system of rev nets as a way to bring in capital and kind of rise the tides for everybody involved, but also like I think more crucially trying to figure out ways for people to more naturally work together on the platform. Like if we have, I think Verbs Coffee and Verbs is a perfect example. Like Curtis is a great founder. He's been working on Verbs Coffee for a long time now, makes a great product, has great branding. And I think what we always wanted to do with the Verbs grants program was say like, Curtis, like how do we almost like Y Combinator for small businesses that are built on these DAOs? Like how do we like supercharge whatever you're doing? Like we have this whole community of people that are willing to support and help. We have a brand you can build on, and we have this community that's willing to like try out and purchase what you're doing. And so, yeah, I think like we're just trying to figure out how to maybe restructure some pieces of flows so that these projects can kind of build their own small little teams and startups and bring people together to try to raise more money for the broader thing. Looks like we got a question.
Yeah, I'm just like, yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's a bummer. And as you know, like I've been through the gamut too before on the Verve side. I think that, well, I'm wondering, this is a thought, this idea. I don't know how like feasible it is, and feel free to shoot it down. But what if like flows were going to the different kind of, I guess, noun derivative communities, such as little nouns, public nouns, verbs, and then it's kind of like looking for those communities to be generating back into the noun community, but it's not to where people are looking at flows, like looking at all these different projects, but within verbs, you can still have these projects be incubated and grown. But it's like a degree of separation. I don't know if that would, yeah, but that's just the high level thought. I'll just stop there. But
So you're thinking like we go to some of these other communities and have them like fund their own kind of incubators almost?
yeah, really, to where it's like it's a two-level setup to where, yeah, how you have flows with the AI application, system that could be applied to like within verbs and these derivative communities, and then just have like a more of a high-level flow that's being determined by the nouns community on which community feels actually bringing back and funds into the larger.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, I definitely see that. I think like if we're able to align like nouns with like these more revenue generating projects, then ideally that can sustain a lot of the public good side of things too. Because I think like Verbs Coffee is better off if they're able to maybe use some of their profits or point to the fact that they're somehow like directly aligned through revenue with verbs that then funds all these other public goods. So it's kind of like coffee for a cause. I think that makes it a lot more like attractive for people to consume the coffee because they like can tangibly see the money go into a cause and essentially decide where it goes. But yeah, I definitely agree. I think like having like a I don't know, there's no way to bring in new money, and like that's really what we wanted to focus on with that first proposal. Like I think there's plenty of opportunity for people to drive donations or matching funds or get funds from other grants programs or other DAOs to try to like grow this pie for everybody. And funny enough, we got on a call with it's called like Cares Club. It's like there's like a kind of boutique consulting branding group that try to pass some props and nouns, but they're like big pitching nouns to all of these brands like the NBA and stuff to try to get them to do activations with nouns and kind of like put money into the treasury. And so they mentioned that it'd definitely be possible to have, and they actually already pitched it to like Michelin, I guess, which is the tire company, to have them like run their own flow around like recycling plastic, or I don't know what the exact specs are, but yeah, so basically like just trying to figure out ways to get more money either through like corporate donations or kind of this more like grassroots, like almost like mini startup approach, running like an incubator. And we actually have a proposal up in Verbs to try to, I might edit it a bit, but basically to try to do this incubator in Verbs and do it in a way where we don't just have like the artist residency and they're off just kind of on their own making art and then maybe like the meetups and then have the incubator. I think we want to try to tie it all up into one budget almost, or one or two budgets, where it's like Curtis can go in there, apply for Verbs Coffee, get a budget of a couple $100 a month to go out and pay artists that are making great artwork, pay people that are going to help drive attention to the product. And then the idea is that some portion of the sales or whatever will make Verbs more sustainable and raise more money for Verbs.
Yeah, I think with some of the feedback that you received, like in the comments, has there been anything that really stuck out? Like, oh, we could implement this. Like I guess the people providing constructive feedback, like, okay, if, in some sense, there's just there's like, no, we don't like this.
Yeah, I think it was tough because like the first proposal was all geared around like sustainability and like building new inputs for capital through donations and also building out this RevNet system. And that's what we felt was like the most pressing need. And like it's because flows is zero sum currently. Like one person's earnings take away from another. So we felt that was the most pressing need. We structured the thing around that. We got a bunch of no votes from the break even crowd saying like this is too much money. And then we also got like maybe 20 no votes in total from other people in the community that were saying we needed to prioritize like curation and accountability features, which either way we definitely need to shore up. But I think we kind of took that as like, okay, based on this feedback, we'll reduce the budget and we will prioritize the accountability features more. And then we submitted the other proposal, and then the break even, and then most people agreed with it. There's only like 2 people that voted no, except for the break even crowd. And the break even crowd came back and said like, we shouldn't be paying people continuously to do charitable work anymore in the DAO, which is kind of unfortunate, but it's a fair take. And we need to focus on sustainability, but it's kind of like first proposal was about how to make this whole thing sustainable. And I don't see any other like protocol level proposals to nouns that are like meaningfully trying to change the game. And especially if it's like a small percentage of the treasury, I don't really agree with the rationale, because it's like what else is on the table and like what's your vision for nouns then if you're not on this. But ultimately, like I guess to answer your question, like the biggest piece of feedback I think was like around like sustainability and trying to make this thing like not just like a money spigot that's returning nothing to the DAO.
I thought a lot of downs was around like funding, like help fund public goods, credibility, people, and then people buy more downs. Like,
yeah, I mean that's definitely what it used to be, and it's unfortunate because like if we had brought this same tech, like given it wasn't really possible before some of this AI and L2 and superfluid technology came out in the last like year, but if we had had this tech in nouns like 2 years ago, I could easily have seen them putting in like hundreds of thousands of dollars a month to fund all different types of initiatives. But it just seems like this new party in the DAO that cares a lot about sustainability has like 200 votes, and they spent a bunch of money to buy them, and they want to try to course correct it from.
okay, I see. Yeah, like so they put in, they're invested and they kind of want to get a return on the DAO, which It's a bummer.
But yeah, I'm curious if anybody else has seen like I know we got Paul in here from Gardens, and I know you guys are running a Gitcoin round, but I'm curious like in general if people have thoughts on like how to I guess just like make flows sustainable or drive more money into it.
I'd love to hear from
Yeah,
Wasabi.
yeah. The kind of so I've been thinking a lot about this, and this is especially related to Gardens, and we're very soon going to have a governance token, and the governance token is going to launch on Juicebox, and payouts for the Juicebox campaign are not going to be enabled. So it'll kind of be held basically like a GoFundMe round, where there needs to be some amount of money that's raised and a vote that the campaign has reached economic sustainability for the project before these payouts go out. But what this effectively means is that Gardens gets to have a governance token in the meantime while there's not necessarily a financial component to it. And this is really important for us to even use our own platform, is that we need to have a governance token. And Gardens believes a lot in the idea of an ERC20 governance token that is liquid, and this is needed to have natural project evolution cycles and to be able to have the project transition from one leadership team to another leadership team because you have a liquid token, but not necessarily having this token be a speculative asset that people are owning because they want to make money. And so what this means from that context, having a Gardens token that needs to be distributed to the people who are creating value to the project is a problem, and Flows is a really nice natural solution for how to distribute this token to different people. That's not necessarily compensation for work. It's not being paid out like dollars for a contract that people are doing, and it's also not charity. This is about distributing ownership in the collective to the people who are creating value for that collective, so that they have the decision making power to make sure that it continues to be really valuable for everyone deep into the future. And I think that's a like potentially really interesting revenue model for flows, where if you can spin up a flows instance for governance tokens that are set up like this, you can take a portion as a fee. And I know Gardens would be really happy to pay a fee to be able to have that power to distribute governance tokens to the community. And yeah, our goal is to hit an amount of funding in our Juicebox campaign that makes it very clear that there's a lot of financial support for Gardens and that it's ready to be a sustainable economic entity. That would be the point at which liquidity for the governance token would be added, and everyone who's received governance tokens would have the option at that point to sell their stake if they wanted. But yeah, that's the kind of model I've been thinking of, or at least connected to Gardens and Flows.
Yeah, for sure. That makes a ton of sense. I think like having people earn a vote for their efforts in like a network and software stack that they're building makes a ton of sense. And it's like definitely fairly possible to set up a not fairly possible, I don't know what that means. It's definitely possible to set up a flow for like an ERC20. Just need to wrap it into a super token, and it should be pretty straightforward to set it all up.
Nice.
We'd love to hear. Yeah, Leo mentioned wasabi. Love to hear. Do you have got any thoughts? I know we've been talking a lot about sustainable revenue and other conversations.
I'm out here reading all of the comments left in the actual proposal. I understand the feeling, and it's a bummer that most of like have the majority of people agreeing voting yes, and just like 3-4 wallets are shutting down the proposal. It's crazy, but I feel like I don't know. I take pride of myself of looking at rejection as an opportunity to build better systems, because at the end of the day, I feel like people is all about like they worry about the risk of when there is financial value involved in whatever process. So I feel like this is an opportunity to, I don't know, find a way to lower maybe not the ask, but probably the parts of or the components that involve any risk. Because at the end of the day, this feedback is, I feel like it's helpful in a way because if you are able to come up with a system that is addressing the feedback, then you are going to be future proof. Because one of the like I read the comment left by the well 5 grams, and he has a point. Like he just worry about creating dependency on grants funding. I also agree with that because I have seen that problem happening in Gitcoin and in many other platforms because grants dependency um, you know makes you dependent on a specific source of value, and that's not ideal for builders because as a builder, like I want to be like, this is my personal opinion. As a builder, I want to be resilient myself. So if I depend on a specific entity to fund my roadmap, then in a way, facing a risk as a builder. This is not even about the financial value itself. This is about me as a builder that I wanna feel secure. I wanna feel that I can go, like say, I can wake up tomorrow, receive a rejection. Like I have received some rejections the past few months, but it doesn't matter because I have contingencies. I feel like contingencies, when you have those in place, even the person or the organization that are rejecting you, then they are going to be like, oh, did I make the right decision by rejecting this proposal? Because this person had contingencies in place. So yeah, I feel like if you can find a way of lowering the risks associated, like, and make capital more efficient by, I don't know, having a flywheel in place that, let's say that you need, in this case, 200 something. Let's say that you only need, you no no for the sake of this comment that I'm going to make, let's say that you need only 50% of the original amount. So you can use that to optimize for the revenue flywheel first, so you can de-risk the rest of the capital that you need later. And I did something similar with a farm that I'm about to launch. So we needed, for 1 year of development, the budget is 40K. So we make sure that we raise at least 50% of the budget. So we raise the amount that we need to reach cash flow. So with the cash flow, we are going to develop the rest of the project. So, basically the items, they don't rely on the grant funding. The only component that is relying on the grant funding in this case is how to reach cash flow. And we secure the funding, and now we're gonna work to reach cash flow, because that's the most critical milestones that we have, because with the cash flow we're going to be able to bankroll everything else in-house. So the sustainability flywheel is being prioritized, and we are de-risking because we don't longer need to raise 40K. We only needed to raise 20K but this is just our scenario. Just to put in practice my.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think it's all about like how to make these like at least be able to go back to nouns and say like we're working on helping all of these small projects become sustainable, or like building this engine or like incubator within flows that kind of helps uplift all of the other public goods projects by like being sustainable through like being a small business or whatever.
Yeah, I think that's a really good framing. The incubating, and yeah, I think it helps a lot to not have a association with charity, unless you're approaching like a Michelin or a company that's looking for goodwill, and charity is good for them to improve kind of their like brand image with other people. But within our space that makes sense to me that the people who would vote no would be the largest holders, because those would be the people with the most financial stake to lose in the system. And I think it really helps if we can shift the mechanisms to act less like charity and more like an incubation of a successful project that can reach economic viability on its own.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think
Totally.
it's really cool.
Like, if I could jump in as somebody that's, has a little flow and was applying for a music flow for the Impact concerts, we don't want to like depend on, especially the way it is now, flows. That's like mentioned before, like kind of what you get takes out of the pie from others. So with what we're trying to do with Impact concerts, which is based around raising awareness for other projects, is to somehow reach a level of sustainability so that we can, pull these off, have a couple of months, pay the stream team and the mod and the musicians, and maybe hopefully have enough to give like a little bit to the projects that are speaking, and ideally pay for some of the time that it takes to organize and do all the work to make them happen. But it's not like we just want to have flows and a couple other small grants to rely on. We want that to be able to get started, to be able to have something to work with, to build up, and to be able to have access to other formulas, other maybe larger companies, maybe corporations that do want that goodwill. So they might be a sponsor of some type, to be able to make maybe I spun up just kind of experimenting a little Clinker impact token, maybe to have some way of raising revenue through a token. So there's probably a lot of possibilities. I'm just not an expert in this area. So having a little help getting started and continued support with kind of more than just monetary, but with learning and getting educated and understanding how these systems work to be able to grow into something that is sustainable.
Everyone is trying to be sustainable in the ecosystem. Even Ethereum Foundation. Even
Yeah.
Ethereum
At
Foundation
the
only
largest
have
level.
like 3 to 5 years of runaway right now.
Mhm.
So I feel like that's going to be the keyword of 2025, like
Sustainability.
sustainability.
I remember when the sustainability movement started like 10, 15 years ago, like when that became like everybody saying now we need to bring it back. I kind of want to keep like on the point that I brought up in the sense that because based on kind of the feedback I'm hearing from like the nouns now, because flows right now, recommend how many projects were being funded?
I think like 215 or something.
Okay, which okay, and what was the average amount per project?
We paid out like 180 grand, so I think there's like probably 250 projects in total. So let me do that right now.
Okay. But that's even 200 projects. I can understand with like that like it is giving me more context to understand that it's kind of is a crapshoot to a degree of like if you focus on how this could be money back in the sense like how are these going to be sustainable and how are you implementing a mechanism to where maybe one of them or a couple of them are successful, how are they actually going to then be responsible or have like some requirement to give back, right? Because technically they could just get the funding, see it take off, and then go off. And I do see that connection, and that's why I go back to the public nouns, little nouns, verbs, communities, because those are already like offshoots and larger communities to where you could more easily measure. Like those communities have flows going to them, and then figuring out some way to where those DAOs are more focused on generating revenue and funding impactful projects that create sustainability, and then kicking back funds up to the larger nouns DAO. I feel like the people that are currently against it, I feel like that might, and it doesn't have to be these derivative communities of nouns. It could be other more established communities, but this seems like there needs to be a higher level. But I still like flows for funding, initial projects, that need, a couple hundred or a couple thousand to get started. But I feel like that might need to be at a lower level for then the higher levels more focused on sustainable streams that are streams going to more established communities that are also kicking back funds to those communities as they grow.
For sure. Yeah, I guess I'm definitely on the same page. I guess it's like a little unknown in my head, like what or how to slice it, I guess. Like I definitely agree. I think some form of like funding verbs or nars, and like knowing that they're able to drive some revenue back through like some incubators that they're also running makes sense, or if it's just like at a base, I don't know, at a baseline, like there needs to be some sort of like revenue engine within these flows that drive back value somehow. And like my hunch is that every project can raise some sort of money through donations or whatever, but I guess the outstanding question is like, do we want to structure it like at a super grassroots level where like even all of the public's good projects are like on the ground trying to get matching funds, trying to get donations, doing all this stuff, and acknowledging that like they might not ever be able to be fully sustainable. I don't know. I feel like it's probably going to be some mix of that, but I'm not really sure.
That is true. Like not every project has a clear or will ever have a clear revenue model and way to really generate funding. That's why like my thought is around like these having a way to incubate those type of projects within like a Verbs community to where it's funding a project never, but Verbs is still finding other ways to kick back funds up to Nouns to where it's not like Nouns is directly funding projects that never will bring in revenue or help grow the treasury of Nouns, but you're still able to do that indirectly because it's funneled through like a smaller organization that wants to prioritize that, and but also is prioritizing sustainable bills as well that could kick back funds to the larger DAO.
How do you think the funds kickback would look? Like any rough ideas?
I think there could be, trying to think about that one. So I think there's many. There's like 4 or 5 ideas pop in my head. I'm trying to like figure out which one makes the most sense. And anybody feel free to chime in if they have thoughts on this. But it depends because like if it's like it's easier with like products or something that's goods or services, or maybe more so goods than services. But also too, it's like what's the kind of, I guess it's more so if you're getting let's say you're getting a stream from Verbs or something like, which is coming from a larger flows, and that's really helping you to sustain your business. There really isn't too much, I guess, like there's no legal agreement, right? To be like, okay, you're giving X% of revenue back to the DAO. So I don't think that could be enshrined, but maybe something with your flow and continuing to receive your flow is something that could, I don't know, it seems kind of like you're just giving the money back, but like kind of paying to keep your flow open or something like that.
Yeah, I guess I wonder, like, I don't know. The only analogy I have is like we're building like a Y Combinator for grassroots projects or something, and like if we look at how they drive value back, like they invest as like the first check in a startup for like a small percentage of like, I guess, equity, and like I don't know. I really like I've leaned towards the value accrual back to the DAO mechanism as being like some flavor of that, where it's kind of like
Could be like a token swap or something. Like
yeah,
need a token.
we let them launch a RevNet token. Part of launching it through flows is that like the initial like couple percent of the project token like will always go back to Nouns or whatever. And like it's like I don't know, it's a better way to align people, I feel like, than expecting them to like split a portion of their profits, because like their books can always be cooked for that. So I don't know.
Yeah, that's a great, and that's on chain. Like, because I was trying to think of like the attachment, but yeah, the RevNet, that I think that could be a great way to approach this. Easy, you had your hand raised?
No, maybe it was stuck up from later, but that does sound like a viable approach. I mean, me coming from probably thinking more about impact concert stuff. I'm thinking like, well, it's always been free, but maybe we could like sell tickets to a VIP tier, and part of the ticket sales could go back into a pool that tries to purchase a noun or goes straight back to nouns or through flows to nouns or something like that. But that wouldn't work with everyone, because with so many projects and such a wide spectrum of people picking trash up off the beach or feeding homeless dogs, or like there's just so many different types of projects that currently are getting funded through flows, that it's just tricky. So yeah, maybe some sort of token launch where a part of that goes into a pool and then that goes back to support the DAO. Seems like it could be workable.
Well, maybe from the jump, like projects could declare, hey, we're a project that's, we're looking and actively bringing funds and traces about. We're not a project like we're, just looking to continue doing this work, and those could be kind of weighted and treated differently in how they get governed in their streams, potentially. And I also think that's like it'd be a cool thing to where if you're one of those projects, like you pick on the path, like creating your flows, like you want to start generating revenue, it's then like it'll have a pool for you to start putting in funds you get to build towards doing a token, potential token launch, with RevNet and things like that. And but like it's like you're actively being encouraged to build up, this pool to then eventually, launch. But like that could be potential. But I agree. There's definitely gonna be projects that never are gonna be trying to get revenue and doesn't even make sense to them. But the community wants to support those. I think the community should be able to, but maybe it's something that should be defined when you create like your project on flows as to what type of project you are.
Good stuff. Yeah, I mean, this is just an epic conversation.
Yeah, I'm loving this. Yeah, great. It's turned from the garden space, like, well, it's great.
The way to bring it together, perhaps, is like in the current gardens, in the current pool, in the allo capital pool, in the gardens, in the grandstands, the Bitcoin grandstands. Like, is that at all something where flows might be eligible? I mean, now Paul and Rockman, you're both here, and I just was thinking that might be something, but maybe it's not. And obviously, it's not everything, but maybe it's something.
Just seeing the proposal that was put in, I don't think there's enough capital in that to maybe could help with some aspects of the proposal, but definitely not all of it.
Well, yeah, the ask would definitely be different than the ask to Nounstar, but just from in like Paul, how would you? Well, I guess independent from flow. I don't know if you want to speak to that on a recorded space, but just like how would you describe the eligibility? What is a capital allocation thing that is eligible, that might be eligible in this round? How much? Like, what are the requirements? How much along the way does it need to be? What's the development process? What stage does it have to be? What are those eligibility criteria things?
Is he there?
Oh, sorry, was that to me?
It's to Paul, but it looks like he's having mic issues because he is unmuted, but we don't hear you, Paul. We can't hear you. All right. Well, Paul will be back.
Yeah, but so the like intertwinement of different funders also to flows. To me, it makes sense to diversify it, and if not, or even like I think that's the showing the funder more is also a flywheel. Flywheel is not just money, and from my perspective, and like the soul proliferation idea, right? Something is funded by nouns, it's more clear than something is funded by flows. What I've been really wondering, and would be great to get some data on that, if at all possible, like how many people who know about flows know that it's fully funded by nouns? I'm really, really interested in what the answer to that question is. And I think if that is more tied together, like, or even people who are funded by flows also communicate more that funding is coming from nouns, or I don't know exactly in what way, but there's a awareness flywheel as well, and there have been nouns bought every day even before the nouns break even movement, and so some of that awareness work has helped, and it's difficult to track these things. But I think improving that is, in my opinion, also helps with the whole flywheel thing.
Hey, is my microphone working now?
Yep, you're back.
Nice. I'm definitely going to drop out again soon. I'm driving now. I've got to make a flight, and I'm getting further and further from civilization. So if I drop out, that's why. But to answer the last question, Flows is like exactly the type of capital allocation tool that is a fantastic fit for the Allo Capital Builders Fund. The fund is it's only 1 to 3K is like the amount that's realistic to get in a proposal. So we're encouraging small single milestone build proposals for that. since that's kind of what it's able to fund. But the short answer to what it means to be in the Allo ecosystem is at this point what Allo patron NFT holders agree is to be in the Allo ecosystem. So that's I think if there's a compelling part of the proposal to say how the proposal is going to be contributing to this broader network of capital allocation tools, then that's really helpful for the proposal. And yeah, it kind of centers around all of these issues that we're talking about of like how can we interoperate and make sustainable models that are all supporting each other and creating this ecosystem of useful tools. I hope my microphone is still coming in okay.
Yeah,
I
we
don't know
heard
if
you
you guys can still
You're
hear me.
good.
loud and clear.
Thanks.
That makes sense.
That makes a lot of sense. I almost wonder if we could apply to just have like some flows funded versus like from the development side. I don't know.
I could speak as another operator around. You could. It just wouldn't be much funding. So, like, this kind of depends. Like, because I guess what's the kind of minimum amount you would like to have to fund to put in the flows to start flowing to projects.
I think it could work for like anywhere from a couple $100 to like $1,000 or $2,000. I mean, a lot of the flows were like anywhere from 1,500 to, before we even got the big amount of funding, we ran flows with 10 grand a month, and it was still working pretty well for the like small projects that it applied then. So I think anywhere down to like $500.
Okay.
And how does the voting system for it work? I know there's some AI scoring component, and is there also a voting component too?
Yeah, it's all like you can basically specify a ERC 721 as a voting token, and then you can specify like a quorum. And so if there's like, let's say $1,000 budget and the quorum is 10%, means you need 10% of voters to vote in order for the budget that is decided on by voters, which let's say is 50% of the total budget, to like reach its maximum. So by default, if nobody votes, the funds are split evenly between all the builders in the flow. And then as more and more people vote up to quorum, the amount of money that is decided on by voters increases to like a maximum amount. So like with flows, the quorum was like, I believe 5%, and then the max amount it could be was 50% of the flow. And so if you had $1,000 a month flow, then as more and more people voted up to quorum, then the funds that were decided on by voters scaled up to $500 a month from $0 a month. If that makes sense.
That makes sense. And kind of the first thing that jumps out to me from that is that it would be really cool to set that up with the Allo patron NFT as a voting token, and then I think there'd be a really clear Allo ecosystem benefit if there was an instance of this set up for the Allo projects. And I feel like that would be a interesting enough project that it would go beyond our Allo Builders Fund. That seems like something that Allo Capital should be investing some money into also.
There's a lot that we think Allo Capital should. So I would hope so. Yeah, I think that's a great idea. Yeah. If you don't need too much to seed it, then yeah, I would definitely encourage you to apply.
Cool. Yeah, I'll give it a look.
Cool. Maybe I don't know if Matt could drop a link, but well, I could send it. I'll send it to you on Telegram right now. Oh, go ahead. Somebody say something.
The link is in the comments. When I first tagged Rocketman, I added the link first.
So yeah, Rocketman. Let me know if there's anything that was brought up or that I've said that could help, or if you want to continue jamming on this. But yeah, want to support it any way possible. Can't vote. I have no voting power, but I can't signal. So I think I did signal the last time, so I'll do that again.
Cool. Appreciate y'all. I'll definitely check out the round, and then just my DMs are open, or tag me if you have any ideas. But definitely just trying to keep flows going and make it sustainable. So appreciate all the support.
And Easy mentioned something now. I don't know if you were on the call when the space when you joined around doing like an impact concert with like the different flows projects to like just really show the unity and the collaboration cohesion within the flows projects as a way to bolster the next proposal.
That sounds awesome.
Let's do it. Yeah, I threw it. It was just like maybe yesterday or day before. I threw it in the Flows channel chat. I know Jose chimed in. A couple other people had liked the idea and said they're on board. So if we just start, kind of start organizing, really picking a date, and then contacting people and getting as many of the people that are in the Flows community and getting support to come over, and a bunch of those people are musical too. So I think it would be a great opportunity to raise awareness. We can shout out nouns from the mountaintops. But yeah, it seems like there's maybe there are other options. I mean, it seems like there's so much kind of like grant funding out there, whether you see like, oh, a Cello public goods round or this or that, and it's just sometimes for me personally it's like overwhelming. I'm like, I don't even know if where to fit in or where to try. But yeah, like just kind of getting a solid game plan, and like you're already doing, kind of tightening up and revising how we can go about getting at least the majority on a more sustainable road, so that we're aiming for that. And then yeah, just doing an epic event and getting a bunch of people aware of how much good Flows has done in the past, and how much good it can continue to do, and how much impact in the real world there is from it. So yeah, let's do it.
Oh, that sounds sick. Let me know how I can help. I got to bounce, but thanks for the time, y'all. Appreciate it.
Yeah, see you, Rocket. See you, Rocket.
Much love.
All right, cool, Matt.
Thank you
Yeah,
for joining.
been a 2 hour space. So I know we typically have a closing items. I don't know if we really have any, but is there anything you want to close with, and then I'll go close the space up.
Thanks for putting this on, off. This was fun.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Good to see you. Good to hang out and talk with all these good people. Thanks for organizing.
Appreciate
Oh,
you all.
appreciate it. Yeah, go for it, Matt. Close this off.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. Thanks, Alpha. Thanks, everybody else. Another heater. Don't have too many updates on the closing. Less than 1 day left to allocate your rewards and Octant if you have any GLM locked. I think the Regen Network Cello partnership is actually a pretty interesting storyline. They had a Twitter space earlier today. Yeah, I think that's all I got off the top of my head. But yeah, good stuff.
Cool. Good stuff as always. Yeah, appreciate everyone for joining the space, and especially those stayed the full 2 hours. This was a great convo. Yeah, looking forward to more discussions and continue to work together with everybody here. So yeah, just appreciate everybody taking the time to join, and have a good rest of your Thursday.
See you guys. Talk soon.
Bye bye.